keeping up with everything that really impacts our lives, well, it can feel like a never-ending struggle, you know?
Mm,
Especially when you think about how our most important institutions are being run, the ones we really rely on. It's easy to get overwhelmed by all the daily news.
it really is.
So for today's deep dive, we're going to laser focus on a pretty crucial development in South Africa. This newly announced plan to tackle corruption, specifically within the Department of Home Affairs and the Border Management Authority.
That's right, yeah. We've got Minister Schreiber's press conference from just the other day, March 28th, 2025, and the real takeaway here is grasping just how significant this initiative really is. We're not just talking about some administrative fine-tuning here. This is about the very agencies responsible for establishing who we are on paper, who gets to come into South Africa, and, in the grand scheme of things, our national security. So let's kick things off by getting a handle on what's led us to this point, why such a sweeping crackdown is even considered necessary.
Yeah, and it's not like these departments have a spotless track record, right? Can you give us a bit of the backstory? What's the history of corruption and mismanagement within Home Affairs and the BMA that makes this initiative so urgent right now?
Yeah, you're spot on. Unfortunately, these institutions have been grappling with some pretty persistent accusations, and for quite a while now, we've seen these long-standing worries about corruption, mismanagement, even abuses of power. And understandably, this has fueled public frustration and a real erosion of trust in these crucial branches of the state. It's a situation that a lot of people feel has gone on for far too long.
And it feels like a few recent events have really pushed things over the edge, haven't they? Prompting Minister Schreiber to make this announcement. Could you maybe shed light on some of those specific incidents that seem to have been the catalysts?
Absolutely. Minister Schreiber himself highlighted a few particularly troubling instances. There was that arrest back in February of this year, 11 Home Affairs officials accused of peddling fake permits. That one incident really shines a light on how corruption from within can totally compromise the integrity of our immigration processes. And then there's a whistleblower report that exposed a BMA syndicate, allegedly shaking down truck drivers at the Bight Bridge border crossing with Zimbabwe. It paints a picture of organized criminal activity at a really crucial entry point. These aren't just minor slip-ups. They point towards a deeper, more entrenched issue.
Those examples really hit home, showing the potential impact on both individuals and the economy. And it seems like Minister Schreiber has a pretty clear view on the extent of this problem. How did he describe the situation within these departments?
His words were pretty stark. He didn't mince words at all. He didn't frame these as isolated events, but as symptoms of a systemic rot. That's a pretty powerful statement, and it really underscores just how deeply ingrained the minister sees this issue as, one that demands a comprehensive and decisive response.
So given that pretty stark diagnosis, let's dig into the specifics of the proposed treatment. What exactly is Minister Schreiber laying out with this multi-pronged strategy to tackle this systemic rot?
Well, his strategy hinges on a few key pillars. First off, and maybe the most significant, is the creation of an independent anti-corruption task force. This isn't just some internal affairs investigation. They're bringing in outside forensic investigators and legal experts with the specific mandate to dig deep into these allegations and, critically, speed up prosecutions. The goal here is to ensure impartiality and demonstrate a real commitment to holding people accountable.
That focus on independence definitely seems key, especially for rebuilding public trust. What other elements make up this strategy?
Another crucial piece is the push to digitize more of Home Affairs services. You might recall they launched the online passport renewal system a while back. Well, now the plan is to expand online service delivery significantly. The idea is that by cutting down on face-to-face interactions in these service processes, you automatically reduce opportunities for bribery and corrupt dealings.
Makes sense, right? Fewer in-person interactions, fewer chances for corruption to happen right there on the spot. Now, shifting gears to border management, those are unique challenges. How does the strategy aim to address those?
For the Border Management Authority, the main thrust is about beefing up border surveillance using technology. We're talking about deploying drones to monitor those vast border regions and implementing biometric identification systems. The goal is twofold. First, to improve their ability to detect and stop illegal activities across those huge borders. And second, to create a technological oversight layer on BMA officials themselves, potentially deterring corruption.
So, more eyes in the sky and advanced systems to keep track of individuals. And it sounds like there's also an effort to give the public a more active role in fighting corruption. Is that right?
Exactly. Minister Schreiber announced the launch of a dedicated hotline and a digital reporting platform. The important thing here is that these channels are designed for anonymous tip-offs. That makes it easier and safer for both officials and regular citizens to report suspected corruption without fear of retaliation. The minister also made explicit promises of protection for those who come forward. That's vital for encouraging people to speak up.
It sounds like a pretty solid plan on paper, but implementing these kinds of initiatives can be tricky. What's the broader political landscape that we need to consider to understand the chances of success here?
Oh, that's a really important point. This isn't happening in a political vacuum. Remember, after the 2024 elections, South Africa ended up with a coalition government led by the ANC, and Minister Schreiber is a key figure from the Democratic Alliance, part of this national unity government. So there's definitely pressure on him and the DA to show they're making good on those promises of cleaner governance.
So the coalition dynamics are definitely at play here, with an expectation for tangible results.
Precisely. And let's not forget, this isn't the first time these problems have surfaced. Public trust has been shaken by past scandals within home affairs. Remember back in 2023, the news broke about thousands of fraudulent birth certificates given to people who weren't even South African citizens? And then there are the constant delays and backlogs in visa processing, causing headaches for businesses and expats alike. These past issues definitely contribute to the skepticism people feel and that urgent need for real change.
And the Border Management Authority, which is relatively new on the scene, has also had its own set of obstacles to overcome, hasn't it? What are some of the specific hurdles they've faced?
Yeah, the BMA has this monumental task of managing South Africa's incredibly long land border, 4,800 kilometers. Critics have often pointed to underfunding, which limits their operational capacity. And ironically, there have also been allegations of corruption within the BMA itself, which makes it even harder for them to effectively control illegal border crossings and fight illicit trade.
It highlights just how tricky tackling corruption can be when it's potentially embedded within the very organizations tasked with preventing it. So against this backdrop of past missteps, political pressures, and these ongoing challenges, how has the public reacted to Minister Schreiber's announcement? I imagine there's a mixed bag of opinions out there.
You're absolutely right. It's been a pretty diverse range of reactions. Civil society groups like Corruption Watch have given it a cautious welcome. Their spokesperson, Karam Singh, called it a long overdue step toward accountability, but he also emphasized the importance of actual implementation. It's about seeing real, tangible results, not just hearing promises.
That's understandable, right? A healthy dose of, we've heard this before, let's see the action. Now, what about the business community? They often feel the impact of these inefficiencies and delays the most. What's their take?
Business leaders, particularly those from organizations like the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, have also expressed cautious optimism. They're very aware of the economic toll that comes with immigration delays and inefficiencies at the borders. Some estimates put it as high as $20 billion lost annually in trade and tourism. Their hope is that this crackdown will lead to a more streamlined and reliable system, which is vital for growth and investment.
But it's not all praise, I'm guessing. What about the opposition parties? How have they responded?
Opposition parties, especially the EFF, have been pretty vocal in their criticism. They've basically dismissed the whole thing as political theater, implying it's more about PR for the DA within the coalition government than a real commitment to addressing the root causes of corruption. Their focus tends to be on issues like low salaries and tough working conditions within both departments, arguing that those need to be addressed to tackle the core drivers of corruption, especially among lower-level staff.
A real spectrum of viewpoints, then. It underscores just how complex this issue is and how high the expectations are. So, looking ahead, why is the success of this crackdown so vital for South Africa as a whole? What are the broader implications at stake?
The stakes are incredibly high. We've already talked about how Home Affairs and the BMA perform these essential functions that touch every single person in South Africa, from basic ID documents to travel and border security. And South Africa's role as a major economic hub in the region, a place where many people migrate to, means that efficient and trustworthy immigration and border systems are critical for stability and prosperity across the entire region. Having confidence in these institutions is paramount.
Absolutely. Trust in those fundamental institutions is the bedrock of a well-functioning society. You also mentioned the potential impact on the coalition government itself. Can you expand on that?
The success or failure of this anti-corruption push will definitely have a huge impact on how people view Minister Schreiber as a leader and on the credibility of the whole coalition government. If they can show they're serious about tackling corruption and making real improvements, it could be a huge boost for public confidence in their ability to govern effectively. But if they fail to deliver, it could further damage public trust and even create
Yeah.
political instability. This initiative is a big test for the coalition.
So, as we keep an eye on things moving forward, what should we be looking for in the coming months to gauge whether this initiative is truly gaining traction and achieving its goals? What are the key indicators of success?
There are a few key things to watch. First, how effective is that independent task force? Are there investigations leading to that actual high-profile convictions and the recovery of stolen funds, not just arrests or initial inquiries? Second, are the technological upgrades happening quickly and effectively within both departments? Are these new systems actually being implemented well, and are they making a difference in reducing corruption opportunities? And maybe most importantly, are we seeing a cultural shift within these organizations? Are officials adapting to this stricter oversight? And is there evidence that they're being held more accountable for misconduct?
Minister Schreiber also set some pretty ambitious targets, didn't he? What are some of the specific goals he's laid out publicly?
He did. He's aiming for visible progress by the end of 2025. This includes specific targets like suspending at least 50 implicated officials and recovering R$100 million in illicit funds. Those are some pretty concrete benchmarks, so whether those targets are met will be a real indicator of the initiative's early success.
This all sounds incredibly challenging, but so important. For a country that's been wrestling with corruption for so long, this initiative feels like a pivotal moment, a real test of their commitment.
Absolutely. It's a test of their political will, of the strategies they've chosen, and ultimately a test of whether public trust in these vital institutions can be rebuilt and maintained.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive today, we've taken a close look at Minister Schreiber's ambitious anti-corruption plan within South Africa's Department of Home Affairs and the Border Management Authority. We explored the multi-pronged strategy, the complicated history and political backdrop, the diverse reactions from various groups, and the really high stakes for both the government and the nation.
And we've highlighted the need to look beyond the initial announcements and focus on real actions and measurable results as the true indicators of success.
Now, for you listening, thinking about the deeply entrenched challenges we've discussed and the different perspectives we've heard, what single factor do you believe will ultimately determine whether this crackdown achieves its goals and truly restores public trust in these crucial institutions? It's a question worth considering as this initiative unfolds.
Yeah, something to think about.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
You're welcome.